then let's go ahead and kind of show you how I could do this. So here's the deal. I have axon step 2, that was a visibility graphics. I set up some filter about what I wanted to show or didn't want to show. Let me go ahead and say that I'm going to, looks like I canceled out of that, so we don't even sort of have that anymore. But basically, we're going to go through and keep on adding filters, duplicating, and that could be okay. But again, that would get to be a big pain after a while. So let's go ahead and think about how we can do this a little more creatively. And the issue is, we can actually start to, if we think about there being a sequence of operations and sort of the house being built up, you can think about having a construction schedule that will have different task IDs or different task numbers or a sequence number that we can assign to all the different elements. And we can actually map that number to all the elements. And the only thing is you have to come up with some sort of idea in your own mind, like what it is that is, you're going to have to basically sort of assign numbers to the different elements controlling when they appear. Okay, and you just need some sort of scheme. Maybe all your 100s are the foundation elements, all your, or maybe all your 000s are the foundation elements, all your 100s are the first floor elements, all the 200s are the second level elements. Whatever scheme it is, it's going to make the most sense to you. But we're going to basically kind of come up with a sequential scheme for numbering these things that'll actually sort of let us then introduce them in that numeric order. The idea is we want to sort of assign this numeric order, and then we'll have things come on the stage in that numeric order. So you got the general idea of that? Does that kind of sound okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and show you how that might work. What you could do is for each of these different elements, the walls, the doors, the windows, and all that type stuff, you'll see we have all these nice parameters. Is there any standardized scheme for construction schedules? For numbering, that is. Not really. This is almost kind of a little bit of a choice. It might be nice if just amongst the different teams we kind of came up with a standard scheme, but now every construction scheduler does it a little bit differently. But I would try to definitely come up with a scheme like, 100s, 200s, 300s, just something that makes a little bit of sense to you so that you can kind of keep organized and leave yourself some room. So it's not just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kind of give yourself a little bit of hierarchy. Think about all the different elements and how many different numbers we might need, and then like what the correct sequencing might be. So here's the deal. We got all these different elements. I got my wall elements. I got my structural elements. All these elements are out here. They have all these different properties, okay? But one thing they don't have is some sort of notion of this construction sequence or the sequence when they're going to appear on the stage. So you say, we're kind of stuck. I need a variable that'll kind of help me control that, and we don't have it just yet. But since it's a building information model, we can go ahead and add that in here. And here's how you do it. Whenever you want to add information to the model, and it's not there by default, what you do is under the Manage tab, you'll find something called a project parameter. And what are those? Those are parameters that you want to add to kind of capture different things that aren't part of the standard database. So we can choose project parameters, and let's take a look at what it is. We're going to sort of get this thing that says, okay, these are some of the project parameters available right now. We're going to add a new one. I'm going to add one. I'm going to call it O. And I'm going to add one. I'm going to call it construction sequence. Something like that. Okay. And in terms of thinking code, something like that. Okay. And in terms of thinking about what this is, we can encode it a lot of different ways. If I want to be able to do it on a stick-by-stick basis, as opposed to by a family-by-family basis, I'll make it an instance parameter. That way, I can actually control beam by beam when they show up, or wall by wall when they show up, as opposed to having all the walls of the same type show up at the same time. So that sounds like a good instance parameter to me, because I actually want to be able to kind of bring them on stage one at a time, or in groups that I can control. Then we have the type of parameter, and you can decide how you want to do this, whether it's an integer or whether it's I would probably make it either a string of text or an integer. I kind of like integers because then it's really easy for me to go ahead and think about like just what is greater than. And the reason I kind of like that kind of relationship after I've done this a couple times is that then I can say, hey, I am now at like stage 100, and I can say hide everything that's greater than 100. That'll hide everything that's in the future. So similarly, when I get to step 150, I can hide everything. So similarly, when I get to step 150, I can hide everything greater than 150. And that way I'll show everything up to 150, but I'll hide everything with a number greater than that. You gotta sort of have some scheme about how you're going to set up the filter to make it work. So you gotta sort of have some scheme about how you're going to set up the filter to make it work. And this greater than is a pretty good way to do it that gives you a lot of flexibility. So I'll make it an integer for right now. Integer, we can sort of put it under some sort of... Is it okay? Got it? Yeah. Okay, got that. Integer, we can sort of put it under some sort of thing in here like, oh, under construction. Kind of put it, that's just sort of putting it in a specific part of the dialog. Then we decide which of the different model elements it applies to. And you can just check them all. The truth is, it doesn't actually apply to every last thing because some things like views, you're not going to bring them onto the stage. Views are really sort of an independent, like a model concept as opposed to a true element. Even rooms, they probably don't apply to that either. It'll apply to most things in there. Project information, that won't get introduced. There's no harm to putting that variable in on enough, more than enough categories, but you get to choose the ones that it will apply to. And when you say OK to that, what will happen is when we say OK, if I come back over here and now start selecting elements like the walls, you'll see that under construction, there actually is a space for that, where we can kind of put in a number. Okay, so let's think about how we can go through and apply that. So actually, let me pause there for just a second. There's this whole notion of adding this like sort of special category, this special like field to the different things. Does that sort of make sense to people as a way of doing that, where we can go ahead and then choose these different elements and basically put in different values that'll sort of relate to sort of the construction sequence. One thing we should do in terms of doing this is we should make just a list in Word. So one thing we should do in terms of doing this is we should make just a list in Word or in Excel or something like that of the order of operations that we think will actually be followed to build the house, and then like just assign the numbers to them so we can have that going into this. So let's go ahead and kind of think about how that might apply. For example, I got these big old concrete foundation walls. Okay, and for those, I can either sort of choose multiple, or I can just do it one at a time. I can choose them there. I can assign them some sort of construction sequence, like, oh, that's going to have construction sequence. Actually, did I get them both? Let's see if I got them both. I think I did get them both. Okay, that's going to have construction sequence. Oh, let me call that 110. Okay, that'll be those initial concrete walls. Then I'm going to have these walls that are sort of sitting on top of the concrete walls. Although it looks like in yours, do we have like a staggered wall of some type? It looks like I'm sort of seeing two. Oh, no, that's the top part there. That's the stucco wall. And what's going to happen there? I can sort of add that in here and say that, okay, that's not going to be 110. Is that what it is called, the last one? I can go ahead and make that, oh, like 120 or 130 or whatever it is. Give it another number. 110's down here. Okay, so I got my 110s down here. Actually, it looks like I didn't get those. Hang on. This one the 110? That's the 110. Looks like I missed this one. And I'll apply that. And this wall up here has my 120. And this wall over here probably is also the 120. Got it? And as you kind of keep on building through these different things, you're just going to go through and start assigning orders to things in terms of currently controlling where things like show up on the stage, when they show up on the stage. Got it. Yeah, they're overlapped walls with each cut to match. Okay, that's what's sort of confusing about the selecting of those. So I'm going to go grab these walls. And again, this isn't really a very accurate model, but it'll sort of illustrate the point. What's going on there? Okay, got that. And I'll go ahead and make those, those are going to be my 140s. And I kind of keep on adding those in here. Okay. And all the way up through the house, I can keep on like assigning these different sequences to it. So for example, if I come all the way up and let me pull that up so you can actually see the top of the house again. Let me cancel this. Hang on. What's happening is I'm having a trouble kind of selecting that because the little arrow, the little blue arrow is right on top of the wall, so I'm grabbing the wrong thing. There it is. So even by the time I get up to here, this is going to be my wall. So even by the time I get up to here, this is going to be my wall. That's going to be, 400. And maybe these alcinite walls are going to be like 420 or 440 or something like that. So you're going to go through and assign these different little sequence numbers to different things. And again, you don't have to go ahead and sort of select it so badly in terms of, I'm selecting them one at a time. If you know that actually things are all going to be matching or you want to grab a whole bunch, you can go through and, in the floor plan view, a very common way of doing this is to go ahead and do some grabbing. I can grab a bunch of different elements, and we can assign sequence ID to a bunch of them. In this case, I got doors and windows and bathtubs and things like that. I can do a little filtering to that to actually say that, no, I only want to get the walls. Or in this case, what I may want to do is actually just get the structural framing inside the walls. So what I can say is if that wall is 400, maybe the structural framing's coming in the 300 series instead. So again, I can choose that. Let me filter it. So maybe the framing in that wall, the framing of the wall at the second floor, that'll be like, like 380 or something like that. But again, I'm just doing this very randomly right now. Select similar. You are so right. Would be a very good way to do that. So for example, I could grab this and I could right click and say, select all instances visible in view. Okay, that'll grab all those of the same type. And I can sort of assign, again, construction sequence to all those, just really at the same time. I can do that in 3D also. That's another very good way to do that. So if I go back to that axon, I want to get all those alcinite walls. Here they are. There's one at 420. I can say, select all instances in the project, for example. It'll grab all of them. And I can make them all, 420? Something like that. So a big piece of this is really just, kind of having this, just setting up the sequence of operations and assigning it. Like this thing over here with the floor over here, or the topography, maybe that is, it's 0 or something like that as the base. And then that backfill piece would come in as a higher number later on. So the idea is to go through and assign these different numbers. And let's kind of think about how you could use that. Because if you can assign these different numbers, then we can actually start setting up filters to display just the pieces you want to. So here's what I have in mind. Let me go back to that axon for step 1. Or you can even do it for step 2 for that matter. Because step 1 is just 0. what I want to do is think about how we can define a filter that will only show us things up to a certain level. So for example, let me even go ahead and rename that. And I'll go ahead and say, let me call that just really through step 100, because that's going to be this numeric scheme we're going to go ahead and use. And I can then say visibility graphics. And what I'm going to do is set up a filter, where what I'll do is, in that same sense of the filters, I'll add a filter. And I'm just going to call this step 100. Okay, and it is going to be, let me go ahead and see if I can get this to work. I'm going to try all and see if I can actually make that happen. I might have to do this in like chunks, in smaller pieces. Let me see if I can get construction sequence. It's a little fussy about this. I actually warn you about this. It's a little fussy in terms of doing this. Let me go ahead and just do it for walls. It doesn't seem to like it if I select all of them, or if I select walls, it'll actually be okay. Hang on, let me try this again. Edit that. Step 100, I'm going to choose walls. I'm going to say that the construction sequence. And here's what I want to do. You got to think about really whether you're going to show things in a positive sense or a negative sense. If I want to go through and hide everything, well, you got to think, what do I want to do? Do I want to show everything that has that less than that? Let me do it that way. Let me do, in fact, I should probably rename this over here. I'll say walls less than 100, or less than and equal to 100. See if it likes that. Nope, doesn't like that. Okay. Let's do that. Hopefully that'll make sense. And I'm going to say that this is going to be walls less than or equal to, and I'll put in a value here, 100. Okay, so this will make them visible. What you can do is, you can say, let's make them invisible. Well, what's going on here? I want walls less than or equal to 100. Oh, but those aren't. There's less than or equal to, never mind. I got my numbering scheme off a little bit. Let's go back to my visibility graphics. That's why I should write these things down so I don't make silly mistakes like this. Let's say that we're going to do the filters, and I'll go ahead and take that filter and edit it. Oh, let's say equal, less than or equal to 150. Okay, I can say make them visible. Let's try making them invisible. Okay, knock them back out. Let me go ahead and rename that because that's going to confuse me. Okay, so again, I can start to control the visibility or invisibility of things, like based upon like the numbers that are assigned. Now, when I do this, what I tend to do is I'll actually do it sort of in the opposite direction. I'll basically go ahead and hide things that are greater than a number. That just sort of says hide everything that's downstream. So what I'll do is just a slightly different way of looking at it. I'll go to filters, and instead I'll change this to, let me edit this. Even here, let me go ahead and duplicate that and rename that. I'll say walls greater than 150. And then I'll add that in as a filter. Let me remove that as a filter from this view. So what I can do is, as opposed to showing the walls greater than 150, let me hide the walls greater than 150. And it'll take out those ones at the upper level. So again, for all these walls up here, you know, if they're like the 300, in fact, let me just go ahead and get this similar. That was a good suggestion there. Let me select all instances that are visible that are similar to that. Okay. If these were all going to be, show construction sequence like, 440, these interior walls up here, again, have a map. You can start taking them out and really starting to control what is and isn't visible. All these walls over here, these alcinite walls there. Select the previous ones over there, and I can go ahead and choose some sequence. Oh, probably the clear story ones will be a little bit different, but I'll make those 500. So I'm doing this very haphazardly. Have an order to your scheme. But this will let you go ahead and start to control those. So what we can do then is, let me rename this because 150 was my sort of choice, is start to set up several different views. I'll duplicate the same view. I'll rename this to be, axon step 180 or 200 or whatever it is. That's the next step where you want to show a discrete drawing that shows the construction progress as of that point. And I'll choose that view. I'll say visibility graphics. And then what I'm going to want to do is basically add another thing. I'm going to add another filter to it. Add another filter. I'm going to say I can duplicate that existing one. And you rename it walls greater than 200.
Glenn. Can he?
Change the criteria.
I think that probably
Yes.
yes, everybody's.
I know it's a whole lot of stuff we just did there. So go ahead and let's stop and unpack that a little bit.
Everybody has to go back over the video, having thought clearly about their construction sequence. Yeah.
Yes, I think
Exactly.
that's the key to this, is really coming up with a good listing of really how you think about the sequence. After that, it's just sort of mechanical.